Hey guys, this is Mr. Druid. This is Chapter 10, Section 2, Additional Notes. So, Section 2 is talking about the House of Representatives, and the first thing we wanted to talk about is apportionment. So, just think of apportionment is how many representatives a state gets. And so each state gets representatives, and it's all based on how much their population is. So bigger states, they will get more members. Think California. California will get 55, 53 representatives because they have like 33 million people living there. So they have such a large population. So they're going to get more representation because they have a bigger amount of people in the United States living there. So they're going to get more representation in the House of Representatives. While smaller states like Alaska, which only has a few thousand, will only get like one representative. And so now it's important to know that each state, no matter their size, is guaranteed at least one seat. So every state, no matter how big, they can have, let's say a state gets so bad, let's say like Wyoming, they get so few people, like they have like 1,000 people living there. Well, it doesn't matter how many, they're going to get a one representation. They're not going to get taken out of the House of Representatives because they went under a certain amount. So just know that apportionment is the determination how we're going to decide the number of who gets uh, who gets members. Now, there was the reapportionment. So re means how we have to do it every so often, like the Reapportionment Act of 1929. So as we added more and more states to the union, it got complicated because we kept increasing it, increasing it, increasing it. And eventually they said, okay, you know what? We need to get a law that sets a permanent number. So they decide, okay, 435. That's what it's going to stay at. Now, Congress can change this act. They can change this at any time, but they just haven't. So this has been in since 1929. They said, okay, 435 representatives. And they say, we're going to change it around. We're going to change it up how many representatives each state has every 10 years because the census is taking place. So that tells us how many people live in each state. And the Census Bureau, they say, oh, okay, California lost uh, a few thousand people. Well, it gave them just enough to drop a representative. So they're going to drop a member in Congress. So they're going to lose a House representative. And because those people went to Nevada. So Nevada gained that. So Nevada would gain a representative. And so every 10 years they go, okay, they look through that data. They say, okay, certain states gained some members, certain states lost some people, and then certain states, oh, they like stayed about the same. So, and then they will decide. So the Census Bureau will say, okay, each state will get, they decide who, uh, how many representatives each state gets. So then they give that report. It comes in like a report. They give that report to the president. The president looks it over, and then the president hands over that report from the Census Bureau to Congress. And Congress looks at that report and they say, okay, we agree that this is right because it's based off the census, and the Census Bureau said, okay, this is how many representatives each state will get in the next 10 years. So they say they agree to it. And if they don't change it, if they don't make any changes within 60 days, or if they don't just like it automatically happens, whatever the Census Bureau says, it just automatically goes through. They have 60 days to make any changes or to adjust this act, but it never does because the Census Bureau is pretty good at their job. So just remember that they do it every 10 years after the census. The census determines how many people are in each state, and they say, oh, okay, certain states gain some, certain states lose some, and then they decide how many representatives each state gets. That report goes to the president, and the president gives that report to Congress. Now, when do congressional elections happen? Every state must vote for the congressional seat on the same day. So every year, so every time there's an election, they all have to do it on the same day. Now, That day has changed multiple times. Now, but in 1872, Congress decided that that election will take place on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November on every even year, even number year. So we had an even number year last year. So we had a congressional election that that year. So just know that congressional elections happen every even year, and it happens on the first Tuesday after the first Monday. So basically the first Tuesday of November, but it has to make sure it's after the first Monday. So Congress, that's when elections happen for congressional elections. Now, an off-year election just means any congressional election that takes place in a non-presidential year. So last year was a presidential election year, so that wasn't an off year. But the next time Congress has because we vote for the House of Representatives every 2 years, so the next time around will be in the middle of the next election will happen on an off year. It's not going to happen on a presidential year. So off years are any elections that take place in a non-presidential election year. So just know that. Now again, a district. So there are 435 members of Congress, of the House of Representatives, and each representative gets a district. So there's 435 districts. Each state gets an X amount of representatives, so each just based on their population. So Michigan has 14. So Michigan has 14 representatives. So this means Michigan has 14 districts. And in class, when we do an activity, I will give you a map showing you the districts of Michigan and showing you how they're uh, split up. Now, Westbury versus Sanders, this was a very famous court case that determined that all congressional districts must be roughly the same in population. So they can't make a area like a district line where there's less people, there's not a lot of people there, and make it to where they get uh, more people in Congress than more populated areas. So they have to make it more fair. This makes district lines fair based on population, not just by like land. Um, Basically, this means that one person, there's one vote. That is what it's nicknamed. So one person, one vote. For every one person, there's one vote. And again, they're making it more fair. So this stopped rural areas, like places that don't really have a lot of people, from being overrepresented in the House. Before this, they were people in those less populated areas were kind of overrepresented in the House. And this would change up the makeup of the House drastically. And the House, in the House, cities and suburbs would gain a lot bigger voice. There's a lot of other political things that happened here, like other more political things. But again, the most important thing is that it gave uh, a louder voice to uh, like cities, more populated areas. And incumbent simply means the current holder of an office position. Uh, and this is usually, when we say incumbent, is usually in relation to an election. So an example of this would be in the 2020 election, Donald Trump was the incumbent president when seeking re-election. So that's the current person in office. So let's say for our representative, we have Representative Sanders. Let's say Representative Sanders, and Representative Sanders is in his election, and he's going to be reelected, or he wants to be reelected. Well, he would be the incumbent representative running for the office. Now, they don't have to be reelected. They can just end it, but that is the current office holder of the position. So, but in a perfect example of this is in the 2020 election, Donald Trump was the incumbent president seeking reelection against Joe Biden at the time. Okay, that is it for section 2 additional notes. Of course, as always, if you have any questions, please send me a message or contact me. Thank you, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.